Okay, starting again. Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to Kaizen Central. Delighted to see you all here today. We've got a terrific lineup discussion. We've got two wonderful guests. I won't waste any more time because we've got a lot to get through. First of all, may I introduce Andrea Wilson from Honall Precision and also Joe Rowe from Ricardo Engineering. Now, yesterday was International Women in Engineering Day. The very fact that we have to have a special day kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? I mean, we don't want to have special days for women in engineering because every day should be a Women in Engineering Day. It's almost, it feels almost ridiculous to have one special day, but at least it highlighted and gave us an opportunity to highlight the extraordinary disparity between the genders in manufacturing and engineering. We were discussing last week, not last week, it was a couple of weeks ago, with Laura McBrown of G&B Electronics about how she managed in her company to achieve 50-50 gender parity, and it was quite remarkable that the Make UK survey on diversity and inclusion demonstrated that only 29% of the people in manufacturing were women, and of the very top jobs, only I think it was 5% are occupied by women, and that includes the top tech jobs. So that is why it's so remarkable to have Jo with us tonight, because she's just been named Autocar's, I don't have the actual Great Women Rising Star 2021, a bit of a mouthful, but she's going to be telling us all about what she does at Ricardo. But I'd like to bring in Andrea just for the moment, because Andrea, I think a lot of the people on this call know you. I'm fairly, and also anybody on LinkedIn who knows hashtag #ShoutAboutUKMFG will know that that's Andrea's campaigning slogan, and she does a fantastic job. Andrea, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. You put out a poll the other day asking manufacturers if they thought we should have a minister, government minister for manufacturing. What was the result of that poll?
85% in favour.
You mean there was a lousy 15% who opposed it? Should have been 100%.
Yeah, but to be perfectly honest, if you read through the comments, I think the people who voted no, it's because of their lack of confidence in ministers and what they actually do. It's not that they were saying that we didn't need one.
Now, I have to have a declaration of interest here, because Sarah Duff, who's with us this evening, very kindly nominated me. And I'm loath to ask Andrea, but you went to have a meeting with the Make UK National Members Board last week, and you raised this issue. I wonder what the response was.
I think the term is cautious. I have posted on the new post today, basically the feedback from them and Ben Fletcher's response to it, which is basically that they're more focused on making sure that there is a very loud voice for manufacturing straight into number 10. So they want to be talking to the Prime Minister, to Kwasi Kwarteng, and to Cabinet, directly. And what they're saying is they're trying to focus on improving the actual mechanisms that are currently in place for manufacturing, rather than looking to have a minister that might actually be a token gesture. For example, it might be a junior minister that gets put into post, whereas if we actually raise the importance of manufacturing, then maybe the post will be more meaningful. In all honesty, I don't know if it's the fact that they've just got so much on their plate at the moment that, they're trying to cover all bases. But funnily enough, the CBI seem to have taken up the mantle and are now also saying what a good idea this is and how useful it could be. So it's going to be interesting, because I'm going to, from what I've been told, funnily enough, not long ago, I'll be copied into some communications between CBI heads, etc., because they seem to think and are much more in favour of this.
Well, that is very interesting. Interesting to see the CBI getting involved. I don't know how Make UK will feel about that, because the CBI does not directly represent major manufacturers. But what's interesting to me, Andrea, about your not just the spirit you bring to your campaigning, but also the focus on SMEs. You truly believe that SMEs are just not getting the look in they deserve. I think probably most people would agree with you on that.
Yeah, pretty much every panel debate or event that I've attended, the majority of people around the table sort of spout that they have X number of employees in 3, 4, 5 different countries. And usually I'm the little one sitting there going, well, I'm in Leighton Buzzard and I've got 40. But even if you look at support schemes, if you look at training, support schemes, grant funding, it's all based around the bigger businesses. And that's because these guys that are actually putting these schemes into place are listening to people from bigger companies. Now, don't get me wrong, we all need the OEMs, we all need the top tier in this country, we do. But at the end of the day, we're missing out as SMEs on the levels and the type of support we actually need, because it's tailor-made for people who have got 200, 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000 employees. And, even if you just look at the grant funding side of things, it screams at you when you look at the administrative requirements of it. Everything that I apply for as an SME, or that I actually find out for myself, because of course the LEPs don't talk to me because I'm not worth multi-millions, so they're not interested because I'm not going to bring 50 million or 50 billion to the economy. So the ones I find out about, it's all piecemeal. I can get a little bit of funding for strategy. I can get a little bit of funding for my website. I can get a little bit of funding for training my apprentices. But if you look at the Sharing in Growth programme, which I've been lucky enough to actually be, I've got to be careful of this terminology, I'm told. I've been lucky enough to be put through to the first round so we can go through to diagnostics. If everything goes well with that, then we're on the programme. That's a 3-year business growth and transformation scheme. Now, that's normally only available to companies who turn over 10 million plus. Why? Surely the companies that turn over 10 million plus can afford to do it themselves.
That is a very reasonable point of view. SIG, is that the aerospace sharing the growth? Is that right?
Yeah, it was, but from what I hear, they're now broadening it, because basically they're understanding that obviously aerospace feeds into other areas. The supply chain feeding into aerospace obviously does nuclear, new tech, green tech. So they are broadening the horizon. But thankfully, thanks to me and a couple of others, hopefully they're also lowering the sales expectations for applications.
I'm going to ask a leading question, which is just so obvious that it's an open goal for you. But it strikes me that what you're really saying is that there is actually no structure in place, and we can talk about whether that might be Make UK or whatever, that actually is flying that flag for SMEs at all in this country.
I don't believe so, in my opinion. Make UK are trying. They have shifted their focus more towards SMEs. Stephen Phipson he's always trying to push for the SME agenda, as are some of his team. But I do think at the end of the day, unfortunately, we're just not represented enough when it comes to the decision makers and the people that are putting these massive schemes in place, and for years, I mean, it's probably 20 plus years now that I've been trying to change these. But I think over this last few years, getting older and more mature and maybe understanding things a little bit more, I've realised that I'm doing the wrong thing. So I'm trying to change it at the level that we're actually working at, whereas we need to be changing it from the top, because, so much money is being wasted on the administrative burden. I mean, we've had some funding from a particular place, I won't name it, but if you actually look at the amount of hours I've been given compared to what I'm now being told to declare as part of my grant assistance, I would say these people are charging between £500 and £700 an hour. Now, if I could charge £500 to £700 an hour in my manufacturing business, I'd be a very, very happy lady.
I get the point. Anybody like to jump in here and either add comments or ask questions of Andrea? Yeah, Ram, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I mean, what Andrea has just told, I mean, I told you about it last week as well, I think, where we spoke about why is every trade delegation, every membership organization only talking about UK PLC? Why not UK Private Limited? And the point is, as SMEs, we get given these little grants which are there for a tiny improvement on your website or to buy a piece of equipment. But the real value is not, we're not asked where the real value is for us in terms of how the funding agencies can best engage with us. And with the other bigger grants, administratively, it's an absolute nightmare to get through anything. So the point is, there is a problem. What do we do about it? I think the first thing is the agencies come to the SMEs and ask us, where do you think any initiatives that we do can add value to yourselves? Number one. And it's not done as a consultation, but have open discussions, roundtables like what you're doing right here, Nick, and let people voice their opinion and be heard. Now, that should be step number one, and then we can take it forward. So step one is basically talk to the SMEs, ask them what they want, where they can get more value from all the initiatives. And that should hopefully set us for a good start, I think. Thank you.
Oh, great. No, great input.
Can
Sarah,
I just say something? Oh,
sorry, Denise, can I ask you, we've got hands raised using the hand thing. I don't know if you know how to use it. I don't.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sarah, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry, struggling with the mute button. No, Andrew, I'd agree with you on the grant funding. It just seems a postcode lottery. I mean, I work with manufacturers literally across the whole of the UK. I'm trying to find appropriate funding. Yeah, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But I had a manufacturing company that desperately wanted to work with us to help them implement ISO 9001. So it was a very small sum of money. And we had several conversations with Oxlep, and it was very clear, and from feedback I've heard, that they just tend to favour bigger companies. So that was a real blow. But I mean, the Made Smarter program up in the northwest, that's a relatively straightforward funding, which has been specifically designed for SMEs. But again, that's just in that region. They are going to be reintroducing it into 2 other regions, but that hasn't yet gone live and operational. But yeah, it does seem to be a postcode lottery, and a lot of time is spent in trying to find where those appropriate sort of grants are, which takes a lot of time.
Thanks, Sarah. Ewan, good evening.
Yes, good evening. And hi, Andrea. Great to see you again. I'm just really, first of all, I don't agree with what let's say the feedback you might have been given by Make. I think having a minister for manufacturing would be a fantastic idea, because at least anybody with the manufacturing in the title means that they're having to think about something they don't currently think about, and are very easy and quick to sort of sweep under the carpet. The other thing, sort of, I guess, so let's say a statement question though. What do you think about how do we get Make UK and the CBI to work together to try and deliver a common voice? Let's say, I'm not talking about all topics, but on perhaps this specific topic.
I've got to be honest here, and I think the door's only opened for me for that today with Tom Mongan, thankfully. He called me this afternoon and basically has sort of made that bridge, I think. And I'm hoping that between the two, I can maybe, it's really difficult because, like Nick, few people have sort of gone, oh, Andrea for Minister for Manufacturing. No, I'm not intelligent enough. I'm not bright enough. I'm passionate enough, yes. I'm hardworking enough, yes. But there's a lot more people out there that have the skills and abilities and the knowledge and the expertise, not just of manufacturing, but also all the political positioning that goes on. But what I do want to be is basically the facilitator, the person that actually gets it out there and brings it all together. I tried this years ago at a Make UK conference, And my question to Vince Cable on stage during the open questions was, do you think we need a minister for manufacturing? And he said, oh, I think we do a good enough job already, you know. And it was just ridiculous. And I've been going and banging on about this for so many years that because LinkedIn has changed so much over this last 18 months through COVID, the collaborations improved and increased so much. Thought, well, actually, LinkedIn might be the one place I've got to bring these people together. So, you know, I'm not convinced I can, you, and you know me, but I'm hone all in Leighton, you know. But I'm doing my best. And at the end of the day, I've always thought, if you don't try, you don't get.
Yeah, and look, I know, don't underestimate though the power of, you know, you get one honal, you get 5, you get 10, you get 15. That's the whole point about, you know, let's say what we're trying to do through KC and Manufacturing TV or Manufacturing Unite. I mean, it's going to be the only way that we can get ourselves heard relative to some of the bigger boys, because the government loves, you know, advertising the fact that it's supporting British business, but you know, it's the old Pareto where it's probably even more skewed. 90% goes to a very small number of, let's say, much larger corporates. And it's not taking anything away from them, but you know, we tend to then get drowned out and forgotten about, and we're the ones where actually it probably will get spent and invested at the grassroots level and stay and be retained in the UK as well, and not go overseas.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree.
Anyway, sorry, I'll go. Thanks.
But Denise, good evening to you. Sorry, would you like to, you wanted to make a comment or ask a question?
Yes, I think what I found for our business, and it's just my husband and myself, it seems to be that it's all the big companies who are in the press saying how well they're doing, everything is great, and they all seem to be in the same, have the same sort of PR. It just seems to be like this big organisation, and those of us who've had meaningful conversations when times have been quiet, I think when you've got this hammered in your face all the time, I think morale and well-being suffer, because you feel as though you're doing your part, you're doing what you can, but it seems to be that these people are dominating and saying how well they're doing, and that makes us feel, well, myself, that sort of causes me to go inside myself and not be the face of the business, getting out there, getting people, because my confidence has slipped.
Yeah.
If you understand, it's just
Denise,
like the big companies
Denise,
are
I
just
think you're not alone, because I think there's a whole host of people whose confidence has slipped over this last 18 months. COVID came and smacked us round the head and nobody expected it. You know, we've all seen various, you know, peaks and troughs through manufacturing over the last 30 years. Nobody expected this. So whatever happens, please don't think you're alone in it, because I've spoken to a lot of people that have had their confidence absolutely shaken to the core this last 18 months. So, but you are right. You know, I mean, one of the things that I do like about the Make UK regional board meetings is the fact that you actually have this ability to talk about the state of trade, and we talk about how everybody's doing, and there's always a variety of stories, some really well, some not so well. So, you know, it's just, don't ever feel alone with it, because there's always somebody in the same boat. But at the end of the day, it's your hard work and your graft and your passion that will get you out of it.
Denise, can I ask you what you do?
I think she's frozen, Nick.
Yeah, I think it's right. But that's, you know, that really does tell us a lot, doesn't it, about the way this is impacting people. It's not, you know, it's not a nice to have for a lot of people. They're feeling extremely sidelined and neglected. Ram, sorry, you got your hand up, mate.
Yes, I did. No, I have a question for everybody. The thing is, we all know what the problems are. We know where the problems are. Now, we've proposed one solution, which Andrea said, we need a minister for manufacturing. Now, we can come up with a range of solutions, some of which will be under our control, where we can come together, act on it and deliver it. And some of them are beyond our control. Can we talk about the things that we can do as a collective, which are under our control, which we can put our heads together and start implementing as a collective. Maybe that's perhaps worth spending a few minutes on.
Yeah, I think what we do as a collective is interesting. It's so there are so many organizations, as we've said so many times around out there. You know that we have a particular mission here, which is going to lead to making a lot of noise eventually around this. But the amount of energy and time and money required to mount effectively a parallel lobbying campaign is frankly not within our individual reach to pull together. It'll take a great deal more. And I think that the plans we've got on the BHAG initiative, my favorite Robert Ludlum novel, is one that actually has focus and will, I'll fill you in with details later next week, but will achieve a level of external interest, i.e. we want to alert people, not just ministers who can smile and give us a gratuitous backhander and that's it. Bye. I don't mean backhander as put money in the hand. I meant that. I think that we need to raise the profile outside government. We need to raise the profile in the public, and you know that very much what we want to do for our mission statement point of view is to raise the profile of manufacturing amongst the general public, because I think that is hugely important. Ministers don't do anything unless they feel that there is some kind of energy behind a cause. There is something that gets my blood boiling, which is when they say, "Oh, it's bloody industry whining again, asking for special favors." They don't make any effort whatsoever to find out what is going on. They don't understand what Denise and her husband are going through. Great to see you back, Denise. See you had a lost connection there. They don't understand any of that. They don't understand small business, quite frankly. They only care about large corporates who speak the same language as them. And so I'm beginning to go off on my soapbox now, so I better back off a bit and let Niraj come in. But Ram, sorry, to answer your point, yes, but I think what we need to do is perhaps have another discussion, and I want to get to Joe quite soon as well. But we'll have another discussion. I'll fill you in later in next week. Niraj, good evening.
Yeah, hi, good evening. So what Ram said, what is it that we are going to do about this? And Mahatma Gandhi also said, change begins with me. So what is it that we can do? And Nick, what you said is to raise a noise, make a noise or raise profile. Problem is, as far as women in engineering are concerned, there are not too many role models that people see. While fact is that we have so many role models here, even within this group. You talk of Andrea, you talk of Sarah, Joe, everyone. There are so many of them now, and you can use your channel to highlight the achievements of women in engineering. And I think that's going to be a big pull for a whole lot of other women to increase participation. I think it's one of the steps that can be taken. I have seen within my own family there have been so many role models as far as women in engineering are concerned, and they have inspired the younger generation to also take on. So it is effective, and I think we could use this forum to highlight the profiles of women that we have here in this group.
Well, Niraj, thank you very much indeed for that, because that was a brilliant segue to introduce Joe Rowe from Ricardo, Operations Manager. Joe, a very warm welcome. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. And tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Ricardo, and we'll talk about how you got into engineering and what support you had, what obstacles you had. Tell us what you do there.
Hi, Nick. Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. Coming from a larger company, I hope you won't hold that against me, bearing in mind the previous discussions. So, as Nick said, I'm the operations manager here at Ricardo in our showroom facility, and here we produce the supercar engines for McLaren. So, first of all, it's a really exciting product. We specialize in performance products at Ricardo in high performance but niche volume product. So our output on the engines is around about 100 a week. And I've got just over 50 people within that operations team now. So we're a 2-shift operation in production. And me and my team are responsible for all of our internal facing operations. So that's the production team, process engineering, production engineering, logistics, and quality, of course. Being in that high performance sector and with a customer like McLaren, they expect certain standards. Quite rightly, their customers expect those standards, so we have to meet those as well. So it's demanding, but always exciting and challenging what we're doing.
The pandemic must have thrown you for a loop, Joe. That must have made life very difficult for the kind. I've seen the McLaren production line at Shoreham. It's an amazing line to visit, and I don't know if it's the same one. This was a good few years ago now. It may have changed, but there are a lot of people working closely together. You must have had to make a lot of changes to make it safe in these times of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. We were affected by COVID, and I recognised that when some of you were talking earlier. Ricardo Performance Products has managed to manufacture throughout the pandemic, but it did affect us here at the showroom facility, and we did have to stop for a little while. And during that time, as a management team, our main focus really was to just try and make it safe so that we could bring people back in. So we did quite a thorough risk assessment. There was a few of us cautiously on site back in the times where we didn't really know how to do that. Walking through every aspect of the facility, the production line, obviously, but also all of the support areas, the offices, the corridors. So we've got it. We put in place quite extensive measures, whether that was physical separation barriers, one-way systems. We've changed, we've put everyone into cohorts and staggered times so that we can segregate the shifts, change break times, and all those sorts of things. So yeah, it was the right focus to put on it, and I'm really glad that we had the backing from the company to do that, and make sure that when people did return onto site, they had that confidence that it was a safe environment to come back into.
Joe, tell us a little bit about your career, about what got you interested in engineering, when you got interested in engineering, and how smooth your transition from school days into a career was as a woman entering engineering.
Yeah, so as we've discussed before, Nick, it's difficult to really pinpoint a point in time where I said, okay, right, engineering is what I'm going to do, and that's where I want to be. Back at really early days of childhood, I was already really interested in making things and creating stuff. Yeah, like from a really early age, I remember, or at least I've been told that even as a 4-year-old, I was trying to help the labourers on my parents' house extension, like build the extension, carrying bricks around and stuff. So I guess that just kind of grew as I grew. And then when I went to school, I was actually quite academic and a little bit nerdy. So I was into maths and science, and did quite well in those subjects, but also always retained that sort of desire to do a little bit of practical, tangible stuff. So was also doing resistant materials technology at A-level alongside my further maths and physics. And I think looking back now, it's quite obvious that those became a natural fit to go into not just engineering, but also manufacturing sort of role. So that's
can I interrupt you? Was that all smooth sailing? I mean, your parents supported you, your school supported you, you didn't have anybody trying to divert you in any way?
Not at all, no. I don't come from a family of academics. I was the first one in my family to go to university, but my parents were always really supportive and pushed me to fulfill my potential, but not into anything in particular. So they let me find my own way to a certain extent, which was good. And you know, I had male role models in my life as well at an early age, and a lot of those people were had practical technical skills, so you know, carpenters, mechanics, builders. So I think that was probably a bit of an influence. So they actually quite enjoyed that I was going down a similar-ish route.
Okay, so then you went to university, and it wasn't quite what you expected.
Yeah, I think university was probably the first time where it really dawned on me properly that I was entering a male-dominated environment. You know, arriving into my course was quite small. There was only 10 of us, but only 2 of us were females, and actually that was probably a bigger proportion if you went out to the wider Mech-Eng faculty at the time. So it was that point where I really started to get conscious of it. And I did a thick sandwich course. So I did a year in industry in the middle of my degree. And that was for a company just outside of Bath where I was studying. And I guess they weren't quite as forward thinking as companies that I've worked for since. But I loved it there. That's where I got bitten by the automotive and manufacturing bug, so to speak, and my heart was set on it. But there were definitely little things then as well that sort of crept in. You know, I remember going into the, as it was then, indoor smoking room, and the walls were covered with page 3. So in terms of whether they were obstacles, I guess they were differences, and I was aware of them. But I'd also say that in a way, you know, the guys in that room were probably more taken aback and felt more awkward than I did when I went in. So I've never really encountered, in my experience, someone actively sort of telling me I shouldn't be doing this or it's not where I'm supposed to be. But yeah, there's definitely differences, and my experience will definitely be different, I think, to if I was a male coming through the same route.
And you don't have to answer this because it's perhaps a little personal, I don't know, but were there times when you felt in any way defeated, or that you know, some of this resistance might persuade you to either not necessarily give up but not try so hard?
It's probably says more about me than anything else, but no, if anything, it makes me more determined that I'm going to do what I want to do. But certainly, again, there's another sort of memory that sticks out for me is when, as a graduate on my induction day, I was sat in a room with 100 graduates, and we were being talked through the company and the structure, and it was put up on the big screen, this slide showing all the board of directors and the execs for the company, and every single one of them was not only male but also Caucasian and middle-aged. And I just thought, why is there nobody that looks like me on that screen? This can't be right. So for me, that probably is more of a driver, because that just makes me want to be up there.
But you would understand why somebody who doesn't have that fire could be perturbed, put off, whatever. I see Alison nodding. I mean, Alison, who drew that quote from Marion Wright Edelman, "You can't be what you can't see," to our attention. Yeah,
definitely. Like I was trying to say, I think that's more about me and my own sort of characteristics and traits, whereas a lot of people, even from much earlier than that, would sort of, you don't see it, that you can't be what you can't, you can't be what you don't see. I think it's really true. It's just not out there. It's not in people's minds that, as a young kid, you're not presented with, oh, that's a viable, you could go and do that. So yeah, I think it is representation and sort of promoting the women that are already out there doing great things in our industry is really important.
Yeah, no, got a hand raised. I just want to ask you a quick question about, because I know that Ricardo does a lot of educational outreach. Do you get involved in any of that? And what do you say to any young women you come across?
Yeah, I do get involved in as many of things as I can, especially things like what we're doing here this evening. Also, I'm really keen when we have placement students that come to spend time with us, and graduates and apprentices as well that might be coming through passing as part of a wider scheme or rotation. So those are great opportunities to get them hands-on and really dig into what we're doing and see how cool it is. But yeah, we do a lot of stuff with STEM and outreach, definitely.
Yeah, and Andrea, you've got your hand raised. Would you like to either say or something or ask you a question?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points there. I mean, I can't agree more with you can't be what you can't see, but that applies to attracting all talent in this industry, not just women. You know, the whole point is we have to raise the profile of this industry and say what an amazing, fantastic, inspirational, and very, very rewarding career it can be, both personally, professionally, and financially. But I do agree with Joe. I mean, because I started campaigning and trying to change things when I was in my early 20s, oh my Lord, the amount of meetings I went to where they were all white, Caucasian, middle-aged old men. And I used to call them lovingly the pinstripes. Because basically, you know, all we ever actually did was end up talking about, you know, their golf swing, etc. And it was very, very difficult. But I do think, and I do love the fact that times are changing, and people like Joe, and congratulations on your award, Joe.
Thank you.
You are changing it, you know, and we can all change it, but we don't need to just change it for women. We need to change it for everybody in general. We need the public to understand what we do and how we do it. And the one thing I would say, Joe, is maybe have a look at primary engineer, because I think as a 4-year-old, if you'd have met Susan Skerlock and her primary engineer team coming into your school, who basically bring engineering kits and bits to make, I think, you know, you'd have probably sort of understood a lot quicker and a lot sooner. And I think this is one of the things I've said ought to be on the national curriculum for like the 4 to 6 year olds onwards, not just Susan and her team having to fight to get it in. So maybe have a look in your area, see if there's a primary engineer scheme. If not, maybe you could promote it, because that's what it will take, engineering and manufacturing, not just young girls, but the young girls and young boys, and everybody in between, of course, now.
That sounds amazing. Definitely going to check that out, Andrea. Thanks. Yeah, and I can't agree with your point more about it, about the promotion of the industry as well for everybody. And it is changing. You're right there too. It's definitely a lot different now to how it was when I first started out, for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always strikes me when people are talking about resistance to change. So often I think there's a lot of fear around the unknown, and for pale, male and stale middle-aged guys who've been running the industry for so long, some of them might fear the change that comes along. But I think it's really important to get across the self-interest. I mean, there's skills gaps. There's so many jobs that need to be filled. And so many people who, with the right guidance, could fill them. Not just men and women, but as we've discussed on this before, disabled people, autistic people, people challenged in so many different ways, but all have a contribution to make. And the door should be wide open with self-interest, the guiding light, saying, you know what, this can help our industry. We should be embracing all this change, not resisting it. Roy, you've got your hand up. Evening.
Yes, I just really wanted to, in support of what Andrea was saying, if you go into the schools, at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, we force our students to make some decisions. And I think we can all have roles to play there. I mean, role models are important, but I think if we're in the schools, either in governor roles, STEM ambassadors, we can start to lay some foundations there, because they have to make these decisions at quite early stages, and they don't know. And what we can do is give them some of that excitement and some of that interest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Roy. But although I'm at risk of telling a story that some of you will have heard before, I used to be an academy counsellor at a local school here on the Sussex coast, a very deprived part of the area, and I was really excited about making the difference wherever possible, and I helped out the careers people. The careers, gosh, this was after the careers advisory service had been binned by Mr. Cameron. So the careers teacher didn't have a clue, frankly, about anything. Doing their best, but it was a part-time role. But the head teacher made it very clear that they were sixth form, getting kids into sixth form was the priority. I said, why? I mean, that's, it's not, sixth form isn't for every child. Why would you make it a priority? I said, well, we get paid extra by the government to get them into sixth form. At which point I said, you are surely kidding me that you recruit unsuitable children into sixth form because the school makes more money out of it. It's a commercial decision. He said, I regret to say, but yes, that is what our owners have told us to do, owners. So, and I said, look, I'm sorry, in all honesty, I can't continue with this. This is a deep conflict of interest. I can't support this at all. And I went on my merry way. And the stories of kids who had been recruited into sixth form, who might have gone into tech training at 15 or 16, who then dropped out of sixth form and became NEETs and ended up either out of work, but they definitely didn't have any training. They were doing manual labor, if that, and it was really, really, really sad. So yeah, I hear that very much. Anybody got any thoughts they want to, more questions they want to ask? Andrea, have you still got your hand up, or is that that's a legacy hand raise? Okay. Anybody else worked in schools and had felt similar risks? Denise, hello again. Just need to unmute.
Oh dear, I'm the one with special needs tonight. Yes, I spent 25 years in primary education, and I actually got up to deputy head, and I was very fortunate in that I was able to bring John into school, and John would do engineering projects with the children, and I think there is a real good need to have engineering in schools at an early age. But I think, sadly, as we all know, within the curriculum, it's very prescribed what you teach. You're told what to teach. And I think change needs to be implemented. And I think with apprenticeships, where people are getting experience out there, I think that could be brought in at a younger age. So children went round workplaces rather than Eden Camp or the seaside or a recycling plant, to actually go into the workplace, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's Denise, that you're spot on. But I've been trying to get hold of Lord Baker this week. He of the former Secretary of State in the Thatcher government for education. And he started the university technical colleges, some of which have been very successful, not all of them have been, but the idea is absolutely spot on. And there was a clause in the 2017 education bill called the Baker Clause, which obliged schools to allow education providers, and I don't know whether manufacturers would be, I mean, training providers, whether manufacturers as well would fall under that, i.e. businesses wanted to go in. And he said 95% of schools completely ignored that clause in the legislation. It wasn't made statutory. The latest schools bill, which is being debated at the moment, he stood up in the House of Lords the other day and said that that he wanted an amendment that that what was called the Baker Clause, oddly enough, would now be statutory, and schools would be forced under pain of law to have training providers and others. I don't know what that means. Brought into schools or allowed into schools to talk to kids. We've got some hands raised. Can I go to Joe first? Because Joe, you're a guest on this issue, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts so far.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe come in on a couple of the themes there about getting into schools and reaching children that way, which I think obviously is a really great thing that we should be trying to do as much as possible. But also I've been learning since being nominated on the autocard list, especially the impact of social media and tools like LinkedIn. And this probably ties in with part of your earlier discussion as well about having a bigger voice. The powerfulness of a LinkedIn post is really impressive these days. Mine from last week had over 7,000 views and counting, which is insane. I would never normally get that many. I don't know 7,000 people. And children these days are so tech savvy from such an early age. I think that could be a really powerful tool to try and reach them without having to rely on careers advisors and the old school way of doing things.
Fair point. Alison, good evening from Atlanta, Georgia, or good lunchtime, whatever it is for you.
Whatever time, I kind of lose track of it. And then you all start talking about wine, and then I get really upset because it's 2 o'clock here. Thank you both so much, both of you, for joining and sharing a lot of these thoughts. It gets me thinking about, there was something that was shared with me not too long ago that said, it kind of reminds me of what Ram's pushing for too, with trying to figure out what it is that we could do as a collective. And that is, if we stopped looking at the problems that exist and started looking at the things that work and figuring out how can we take what works and move it over here to what doesn't work. So I called a friend of mine at our a local high school, and I asked her, I said, what industries are prevalent in your school systems? Who's doing a good job about touting their industry? And she said, construction, they're doing a great job, and they've got people in their under their roofs all the time. And it got me thinking, it got me realizing that what I was setting out to do was, a career day here and there. She said, that doesn't do anything. We need to be in the face of people regularly. And so that's just something to consider. And I know that the challenges of the education systems in both our countries are different and yet the same. But it's a matter of how often, what's the frequency in which we can get in front of these kids.
What does in your face look like to that teacher or to you?
So that was a question I asked Angela as well, and she shared that there are certain teachers and certain curriculums and classes that will have days where they're looking for subject matter experts. So somebody who can volunteer and come speak on something very particular that might overlap with a concept that they're learning, say in physics or chemistry or biology or engineering or whatever. So it looks like that. It looks like, yes, your career days. It looks like sponsoring something. There's a local middle school. It's what they call a STEM school, and every class they incorporate science and math. And I walked in one day and they had an art project that the students had just done. A local metal fabricator had donated a bunch of metal, and the students created, using the aluminum sheets, they created birds that they flew from the ceiling in the room after talking about aerodynamics and lift and all of these different concepts that they were able to plug into art class. And that was fascinating to me. But in turn, that company that donated that stuff, they came in and helped that day with the project. So it was more in your face. It was constant. It was branding. It was marketing.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Thanks for that. That was really interesting. Andrea, hi.
Hi, I think there's two quick things I'll try and share briefly, but they're quite complex. But when I was part of the MTA's Education and Training Committee, we basically had Mazak on board, and the sponsorship that we sort of generated as a group meant that we could bring in over 600 students from local schools around Birmingham and the Midlands into the MAC exhibition. And the Mazak apprentices would actually lead them around the exhibition space, talk to them about what they were doing, what they were learning. The take-up was about 15% because the schools would not allow the kids out, even though we were providing the coaches, we were providing everything for the day, including lunches, etc. So that sort of gives you an indication of how we've got to change it within the schools for a start. But I actually went to speak to my stepdaughter's school because they asked me to. And funnily enough, my stepdaughters were horrified because the school had asked me and didn't know it was going to be at their school. And honestly, they'd thrown this 20-odd-year-old PE teacher in with these kids. It turned out these kids were all the problem kids that were not doing some revision that day. And as I started to do my little speech, I realised I wasn't engaging anybody. So I actually changed it and asked them what they enjoyed doing. And I think this is one thing we could do, is maybe change the way we're communicating about engineering and manufacturing. So I asked who liked shopping. So, of course, there was a number of people who put their hands up. So I said, guess what? You could be a buyer in manufacturing. You could be buying nuts, bolts, this, that, the other. And it's your job to get them for the very best price, for the very best quality, blah, blah, blah. And guess how much you could earn? So we put it on the board. Who enjoys picking holes in other people's work? You know, who's a good proofreader? Oh, me. Okay, you could actually do contract review. You could be checking all those contracts. And guess what? How much you could earn. All of a sudden, on the board, there were 7, 8 jobs that were nothing to do with machining, but all within engineering and manufacturing, bringing talent in, worth 50 to 60 to 70 grand a year. All of a sudden, oh my Lord, they perked up. So, it's about understanding and changing the way we're actually communicating, because a lot of people want to go into schools and just say it's all about making things. It is to an extent, but the support mechanisms around the people who make things. I love my engineers. They're my bread and butter, and I love them. And they, I treat them like the gods that they are. But the business would not function without all the other support roles around, the sales, the marketing, the admin. The guys wouldn't get paid if there wasn't somebody in accounts. So we need to look at broadening the understanding of the career opportunities within engineering and manufacturing. I think that for me is the key thing, and actually making sure then that we're getting this message across to the wider public, because the careers guys can do a lot, but if the parents aren't on board, everything will be undone the minute they get home. So it's all about this public thing. It's this perception.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, good evening to you.
I've unmuted myself. I was only going to add a sort of reflection. I grew up in 1970s Birmingham, and in those days that there were a lot of sort of opportunities in local factories, quite often at the sort of lowest levels, and people would sort of go in, start at the bottom, get an apprenticeship, maybe. And some of the guys I went to school with who left school with very low-level qualifications, dare I say it, a couple of CSEs, as was the currency in those days, and they've gone on to occupy very senior positions through the sort of the whole night school system. Now, of course, beyond the sort of all our yesterdays, which was a television program at that time, how do we recreate the sort of the sense of worth that manufacturing and engineering used to have? Because certainly sort of in those days, there was also a sense, even from the teachers, that if you didn't work hard, you'd end up in a factory. It was kind of a punishment. Whereas, of course, in recent years, as we know around Birmingham in particular, getting jobs in sort of the likes of JLR has been seen as like finding hen's teeth, as it were. I'm really frustrated because I know both my sons that they both went into engineering of various sorts, but didn't end up sort of in jobs in that sort of discipline. And in fact, just as a final sort of, my son who studied civil engineering at Loughborough, at that time, I think we're sort of going back about 10 years or so ago, that the sort of the ambition was to also get jobs working in the city on derivatives, because that's where the money was. But hey, maybe things have changed since then. I don't know. I'm sorry. It all sounds very rambling, and we've been mulling at this problem for donkey's years, and we seem no closer to success. What I will also say is that the tech college system, it has been destroyed over the last 30 years. We need to get back to a really good and effective tech college system. End of rant.
No, rant away, because that's absolutely right. I believe that Johnson, Prime Minister Johnson, is looking at boosting the the further education system, because it has been woefully underdone. Laura McBrown was with us a couple of weeks ago. She actually put some apprentices through her local FE college, and the following year those apprentices were being recruited by the college to teach the next lot of apprentices. Absolute madness. Beverly, good evening.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thanks so much to our speakers, Joe, Andrea. Lovely to hear your thoughts, many recognizable comments, I think, from my perspective. I just really wanted to build on Steve's comments there in particular. You know, it's a sort of age-old thing about the prestige and why would somebody go into engineering when they can go into the city and earn, you know, probably double, treble the salary straight off. And in fact, I was reading, I don't know if anybody noticed the Sunday Times article at the weekend that the American legal paralegals and sort of freshly qualified legal graduates were earning 140k in the top, you know, Freshfields and Clifford Chance and all that sort of coterie. You know, I do think you can't get away from the salary business. You know, people want to earn money, and I think Andrea's approach to the young people in the schools was brilliant, Andrea. Really great way of hooking them in. So I don't think you can get away from the salaries at any point. Yes, it's great to have a lovely, satisfying career if you can. I think also the FE, the vocational education, is woefully underfunded. And, you know, when you think in HE, which Steve and I work in, our students, we're getting 9k a year for our students. In FE, they're getting 3k a year for a student. Is just no comparison. And yet, if we want to have the same parity of esteem that we've been banging on about for probably 30 years plus, then, you know, you need to treat the students equally. You need to value them. They need to have, you know, we got rid of all our polytechnics. In Italy, they still have polytechnic universities. They're very prestigious. In Germany, of course, you know, Doctor of Engineering is an enormously prestigious role, and everybody is a doctor. You know, I think it comes back to education, comes back to esteem, comes back to the way people are treated, the career path they can have, and obviously all of the good things that have been said in terms of communication earlier. So I don't think there's anything new here, just not been enough action, really.
Yeah, well, that well said, Beverly. Yeah, I think we're moving down the track. We aim to do our little bits. Hope it turns out to be a large bit, to actually make a lot more noise. I do despair at times about the way that schools, they are under enormous pressure. I'm not going to be rude about the schools or the school teachers. They have terrible pressures on them at all times, including this ridiculous pupil premium, sixth form premium, which is, I think, a truly wrong thing. If there was one thing I'd change overnight, the Minister of Education happens to be my MP. Not a chance in hell. I mean, he's never mind. I'm going off on a rant again. Listen, it's almost time. So, Alison, I just want you to know that downstairs, I have got an exquisite Malbec, and I'm going to go down and open it. And I shall raise a glass to you all over across the pond in Atlanta, and I'll think of you as I enjoy it. Joe, listen, it was a delight to see you. It really was. And please do come back anytime at all. That link that I sent you for this, it's valid for every meeting. What you brought with you today was absolutely wonderful. What a great story you had to tell. Thank you so much for being with us. Andrea, terrific. You're a star. I think the Joan of Arc of British manufacturing, that didn't end well. Let's think of somebody else. Maybe the Bodicea. Well, that didn't end well either. Anyway, we'll think of some female heroine. I've been watching Vikings. You can be Lagatha. I'm ranting. I shall go. Listen, let you go, everybody. Take care. Have a wonderful evening. Really appreciate you coming along. Andrea, Joe, really fabulous to see you.